Hi everyone, welcome back to Born for Die Rich. And today we are really excited. We have Dr. Ro with us once again, and we're doing a part three of a series on demystifying money. So on Monday we covered what is an asset, on Monday we covered the income, what is income, what is expenses, how do we want to cube our income, basically multiply that, at the same time square root our expenses, right? How can we reduce that? On Wednesday, we looked at the other side of the circle, assets and liabilities, what really are assets, and then considering, some people think some things are assets, but perhaps they're really not, and how could we reduce our liabilities as well. And today, we're going to talk about cash flow. And cash flow is such an important thing to consider, especially in these times, with uncertainty in the markets. If you are you're managing your cash flow, your finance forecast. You could be managing it for your household, for yourself, or you could be a business owner. You could be self-employed. Everybody needs to manage your cash flow. So this would really be an important video for you to watch, right? So perhaps I can see some people joining us. Welcome, and maybe share what are some questions you have about cash flow. Challenges, questions. And then we'll pick that up as well. Great. So
can I jump in? So on the diagram, Daniel's quite clearly stated that we've got cash flow. There's just from my perspective, adding another angle to this, there's two ways to look at cash flow. One is cash flow forecasting. So we've been looking over the week at instant looks. We're looking at your assets, you're looking at your liabilities now, looking at your income now, looking at your expenses now. So it's a snapshot. The green on the outside here, I would like to just emphasize when we put this together on Monday, really is referring to cash flow forecasting into the future. But there is another element of cash flow, which is the instant cash flow as well. So maybe if there's time today, Daniel, we can kind of cover both of those.
Sure.
Because I think both are important.
Sure.
So shall I delve in and talk about cash flow forecasting, or do you want to add more before I jump in?
No, let's jump in.
Yeah, so I think as you're watching this now, hopefully you've taken some insight from what Daniel and I have been sharing with you, which is essentially to look at your income, your assets, your liabilities, and your expenses. But as you look into the future, the only way to plan the future properly is to anticipate what you may or may not have in the future financially and what you might want to bring in. So, for example, you might be in a job right now and you possibly run a business, maybe not, and you're looking into the future and you're thinking, well, okay, it's all right. These guys are talking about buying assets and buying properties, etc. But how am I going to be able to do that? I earn this much, I spend this much. I don't really understand the future. I just can tell you what's going on right now. So what we can do is we can actually create a timeline. And that timeline is broken down, if you really do it into detail, onto week by week and even day by day, but certainly week by week. And you can spread that over a year, 52 weeks. You can go out 2 years if you want to. You can do 24 months. And what you're looking to do is identify, as we look at our income and our expenses, when are there going to be spikes in that? So it might be, for example, that you're in a business where you get a commission, you get bonuses, you might have a quarterly bonus. So you might be on a salary of, I don't know, Sing dollars, 200,000 Sing dollars a year, but you happen to get every quarter a bonus of 40 or 50,000 Sing dollars. And that comes in certain months. Now, if you do cash flow forecasting, you can start to look out and say, well, as Daniel was saying, if we remember earlier on in the week, we talked about this. So if we could reduce the outgoings from the bath and we have spikes of money coming into the bath, there's going to be times when the bath might get close to overflowing. If those occurrences are predicted, you might be able to plan for when you could do an investment into, for example, a property. You might say, well, actually, after 2 quarters, if I reduce my expenses and I get the 2 spikes of cash coming in, by July 31st, I might have an additional 45, 50, 60, 100,000 Sing dollars sat in the bank account. That would be a cash flow forecast. But equally, before I'm sure Daniel's going to jump in a minute, but equally the opposite to that is looking at the bath. What if you're anticipating some big expenses? Maybe you're expecting a repair on your house, or you've got to replace something, or there might be a big bill to pay, whatever it is. That could also spike it down as well. And this is when people go, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting that. Well, if you've done a cash flow forecast, you would have easily expected it. So the beautiful thing about cash flow forecast, it avoids this, but it also avoids this, what do I do with all that money? We can start to predict that. So it helps us plan ahead for both adverse situations, but also positive situations as well.
Yeah, and that's so true. I think with our listeners, I think some of the listeners are really thinking, how can I manage my cash flow better so that I can at least have some water left in the bathtub every month, and then I can slowly build a pot that I can then start thinking of investing or making it work harder. And I think you correctly pointed out some other of our listeners are also people who are perhaps have a little bit more liquidity in their cash flow.
Yeah.
So what Dr. Rowe is mentioning is also a really important point, because being Asian, we're very good at saving, and sometimes you have the money set in the bathtub. You don't want the money to go stale, right? You don't want water to go stale. In Singapore, you're going to attract mosquitoes with stale water lying there. But at the same time, the same concept applies for your money, right? Because if your money goes stale, set in the bank, and we hear talks of people having negative interest rates in the world, it's already have been happening in parts of Europe, where basically what it means, if you put your money in the bank, you, instead of the bank paying you an interest, you need to pay the bank money because you have put money in the bank. So I mean, for those of us who are still thinking of, I'm gonna keep my money locked away either in a fixed deposit or leave it in my bank account, the interest rate is just gonna erode away. The money is going to erode away. We spoke about it in some of our earlier videos with the cost of inflation. Is your money being able to even beat inflation, right? To be able to break even. And a point to note also is that with the money set, or the water set in the bathtub, the forecasting allows you to then find where you have excess capital that you could then channel to start to work harder for you. Because otherwise, you might think, my money is safe. For some of us who might be very risk averse, I keep it in my bank, it's safe. But that is really a fallacy, because there's nothing safe about it. Think about the opportunity cost that is costing you for every month, every year that is set there.
Yeah, because the thing is, it's not so much having the money there, it's about having the money there and working for you. You've worked really hard for your money. And the whole concept of Born Poor Die Rich is we get up, we grow, we expand, we have the ability to earn money in multiple sources of income, which we've talked about already briefly, and we will come back into this in one of our future lives. But at the same time, you want it working for you. Otherwise, all you ever become is a slave to a job where you just sit it in the bank and you just go, well, I'll just watch it. But watching it is like watching paint dry, particularly with interest rates the way they are at the moment. So
Yeah.
the concept of forecasting allows us to say, well, actually, over the next 12, 18, 24 months, there are going to be certain periods where we're going to be more abundant. And our money that we've worked hard for will not necessarily be working hard for us. So how can we get it out and set it working for us? So, I mean, I've done a very quick diagram here. I know it's a little bit quick, but to try and explain this to everybody watching, way you create your forecast is you have January, February, March, April, May, June, July, all the way out. And this is a monthly one. At the top, I typically have mine as income. And so there'll be lots of different incomes coming in here at the top, or if it's just a job, you'll have one income. A represents the income for that month. B represents the income for that month. It might have gone up, come back to normal here. And then I have a separate area, and Daniel and I went through an exercise on this a few years ago. I remember going through this together.
This is great.
Here.
Yeah. Thanks for doing
and
this.
This represents your monthly expenses going out. And remember, this is house bills, utility bills, mortgage, gas, electric, car payments, whatever. There's a combination of these, and that represents by X. Now, occasionally you might have a Y. Y could be smaller or bigger that month. It just depends on what's happening in the future. And along the bottom is the dollar net figure. So if we know this is coming in, this is going out, for many months it might be the same, but then occasionally we have a spike or a drop, and we need to anticipate that, because it's this predictive nature which stops the shocks, and it's the shocks that make us react and stop. And fear, unfortunately, drives us towards making bad decisions. So this allows us to anticipate both the positive and the negative.
Absolutely. And I think just by forecasting, it will allow you to just have much more control of your emotions, because you're anticipating what's happening ahead of time, and you can plan for it with a rational mind. I wrote a post recently on LinkedIn about how we can prevent predictable surprises. It's true for things in our life. Because sometimes we get surprised, but actually, if we had been more dutiful in forecasting, these surprises can be predicted. And I can see quite a number of friends on live. So I'm going to share this tip. I mean, I just want to invite you to like this if you have gotten value from this so far. Just give us a like. That would really mean a lot to us. But I wanted to share this tip that I go through monthly with our bookkeeper. And we do it on Excel, and like the sheet that Dr. Ro was sharing earlier, basically we have a line, a figure that we at the net figure, basically that if the balance dips below a certain amount, then the figures actually change in color, and it gives us almost like a heads up. If I look 12, 24 months ahead, this is a point where maybe there might be a crunch in cash flow, and we do it with a buffer, right? So that even though it's coming lower, there's still a margin of safety, so that we're never in a situation where it's of a panic.
For those of you that aren't familiar, it's called it's a conditional formula that you can put into a spreadsheet. Yeah,
absolutely. So the next thing we do is also on the top end. If the monies, back to the bathtub analogy, right? If the monies rise above a certain level, that also gives us an idea that, hey, this is money, this is water that's sat there. Maybe I want to start to look for another investment opportunity. Whether it could be, as an angel investor where I lend it to someone and get a good return on my interest. It could be I want to channel that to a new property investment, for example. But I think the important thing to note, especially investing in these times, and we can talk about it in another video, is we want to invest in things that we can understand and not try to gamble and speculate, because the markets are moving in big fluctuations at now. So if we are not already seasoned investors, I would strongly suggest not trying to anticipate and guess where the market is going to go, because I've been there back in 2007, 2008, and I've got myself burnt quite badly as well.
Right. Yeah, I think there's lots of good messages coming out from this. And just going back to this analogy we've been talking about, is this, this water that's sat in here, what we don't want to do is leave it there, because any water left stagnant, i.e. money, it goes stale, it's stagnant, it's not working. So we need to get it active. We need to get it proactively doing something for us, but in a sensible, logical, safe way. So whilst there's a storm, you might want to be in more of a tanker. It's splashing against the side of the tanker, and it's a big, solid investment vehicle. This is where real estate comes in. Whereas when there's not a storm, you can maybe go into a smaller vehicle and try different things, and you don't get thrown around as much. And that's where you diversify that tub of water.
Yeah.
But primarily it's about security, because if you're going to start, and of course the challenge at the moment is for many of you over there, I think for a lot of highly professional Singaporeans, you've created this amazing corporate ladder you've climbed up, which I went through myself in getting my PhD. You climb all the way to the top of this ladder, and you're listening to people like myself and Dan, you're thinking, yeah, but I want to make the change, but I'm afraid. I've spent all these years building up this career and this profession, this identity, my ego, my titles, and all these things, and this salary. And as much as I want that over there, how can I reach for that and still keep hold of that? And there is a way to do it. And there is a way to build this additional vehicle of wealth over here, and at some point step down from the ladder and go onto the other ladder. Or if you don't want to, you don't have to do it. So you don't have to do one or the other. You can actually combine these together. But we can do that by looking at our finances now, doing a prediction for the future, and starting to act now in order to achieve what we want in the future, not waiting for the future and acting then. This is the future from the past. Think about that for a minute.
There's lots of good gems over there. Some people might want to later come back and review this. And I just want to say that we're going to end this in a couple of minutes. So those of you who are watching, stay with us right to the end, because I want to share with you this tip at the end that really blew my mind in terms of how I thought about forecasting assets, liabilities, income, expenses. So just on what Dr. Ro is saying, about climbing the ladder, and how I know quite a number of friends, ex-colleagues that are also thinking of career transitions. So how can you also do something today to facilitate your eventual career transition? Right? What are some things that could bring in perhaps more cash flow, such that as you transit and you go into a time of more uncertainty, but you start to get more certainty in terms of cash flow that might be coming in from your assets. Right. Yeah. And I just want to share. Go ahead, Dr. Roy, you wanted to say something?
Can I just one thing? So we need to take it on a separate occasion now, because I'm limited on time as well. So we've talked about cash flow forecasting. The other thing to consider when we use this term cash flow is, if you look at your income minus your expenses, if you have income that is passive, in other words, it's coming in every month from outside of your career, your job, whatever you're doing, whether it's real estate, investments, yield from investments, whatever, another business, online business. If that income at the top here is cubed and you reduce your expenses, you're going to get to a point where the residual cash flow that we talk about in the cash flow forecasting is actually, this bottom dollar sign here is actually a passive income, which means that even if you step back from some of your work, it still comes in every single month. Now that is a really powerful number to be aware of as well. So there's two things we're looking at. We're looking at forecasting the future, the highs and the lows, and where we might have a problem, where we might have some positivity. But also we're looking into the future to forecast what that passive income is going to be. How can I add another 100, 200, 500? I think, Daniel, this week you completed on a property in the UK, I believe, and the passive income from that will be what, approximately?
Oh, it will be probably about 600 a month.
Right. So what Daniel's done is in the process of completing on that property, there's renovation work to do. So maybe there's about maybe 6 to 8 weeks of renovation work. He can look at his cash flow forecast now, and based on the fact that here we are in May, Daniel's purchased a property here. That over there, B, represents the fact in 2 months' time he's now going to have a higher income coming in at the top. And so the bottom net figure in Daniel's numbers will be a higher passive income as well.
Absolutely.
It's very, very powerful. And in fact, if you want to get really clever with this, you have a separate line across the bottom which represents your passive income and one which is your active. But again, we're getting into detail there. And these are things you should be coached on, by the way. So if you find somebody that understands this, it's worth getting them to have a look at your finances and ask them, look, what's the model you use, and help me go through that process as well. Because get it right now, and it means 221, 222 are going to be amazing years for you.
That's amazing. So you're right. We just completed on a property this week. We're really happy about that. So those of you who are keen to find out how I bought a property whilst we're in the midst of COVID-19, staying here in Singapore, can't travel, but we still bought a property in the UK, and it's going to generate for us a cash flow in about 2 months' time once the refurbishment is done. Comment in the chat property. All right, and we'll cover that perhaps in the weeks to come. So I wanted to mention a quick tip, and I think we probably don't have time to go through that today, but just to honor everyone that stayed to the end, I want to share with you this concept that really blew my mind. And if you just look over here, we have the income, this way, income, expenses, assets, and liability. So most of the poor people, their mindset is with the income that comes in, all right, straight away it goes out to expenses. And this is, it's payday, let's go for a treat, I'll buy you a nice meal. I got my bonus, let's go on a holiday, right? Straight away the money flows out of the bathtub straight away. The middle class gets a bit more sophisticated. The income comes in and they say, let's buy a car. You see that? I've got a promotion. Now I'm getting more money every month. Let's buy a bigger car, a nicer car, a flashier car, or let's put something on a credit card and pay it off over a few years. And then it comes out to expenses. So actually, the middle class is even worse, in a worse situation. So this is what the wealthy or the people who with the rich mindset do. With their income, they build up the water in the bathtub, reduce their expenses, reduce their liabilities, build the assets, all right, and with that, generates back more income, ideally passive income, and then with the assets generating the income, then you use that to fund your lifestyle and the expenses. And that's what
we can't quite see it. That's it.
Okay. Is this better? Yeah.
And this, by the way, for you, if you're watching, is a Kiyosaki philosophy that he shared years ago, which I think for us was inspirational, certainly when I read it as well.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I'm going very quickly here. You might want to, rewind.
Daniel's describing, if you're a smaller earner, your bathtub looks like this, right? But if you are a higher earner, suddenly your bathtub becomes huge. There we go. Look, and you just got bigger income but bigger expenses. So it's a bit of this going on. You got to decide where you are.
Yeah.
But that's not freedom. That's just money in and money out.
Absolutely. I will break down that in more detail as we come back next week. We're looking to do these lives on YouTube. So if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, go to Born Poor Die Rich on YouTube. We also have a Facebook group. So go ahead and like our page, subscribe, give us a comments, likes. That would really help us. And I'll go more in detail with tips, practical tips on what we can do today so that your future self will thank you for. Right, so that's...
And actually, just a quick one as well. Those of you that are, if you can put the messages in, it helps me, because if Daniel can send them over, maybe we can pick it as a subject, as a theme for a week.
Yeah.
So think about health, life, relationship, time management, your balance, your finances, your income. Pick a subject and we can talk into that space.
Absolutely. So this is Daniel and Dr. Ro. We're signing off for today. Have a good weekend, everyone. And
Great weekend.
Hari Raya to our friends who are celebrating that as well. Take care.
Yeah.